It's like fermentation's hard to grasp, because how does a head of cabbage become sauerkraut? If you don't do it, it's really hard to understand what actually happens. But if you take a head of cabbage that was grown in hopefully organic or regenerative soil that has trillions and trillions of microbes per teaspoon of soil, just like a mind-blowing amount of microorganisms in the soil, and that head of cabbage was grown in that soil, then the microbes are living within the cell walls, on the skin of the cabbage, everywhere. They're everywhere. So if you take that head of cabbage and leave it on your counter for, let's say, a couple days, what's going to happen to that head of cabbage? It's going to rot. Right? It'll eventually turn mushy. It'll start decaying. It'll turn brown. It'll oxidize, and then it'll turn, kind of mushy. So what happened in that process was oxygen met with the elements of the cabbage, and it started oxidizing and decaying, making it go bad. And the microbes are mostly lactic acid bacteria. And so they are anaerobic. They don't like oxygen, basically. So when they're hit with oxygen, they're not going to multiply into the billions and the trillions. So that's the head of cabbage. If you take that same head of cabbage and you put it into a vessel of some sort, and you either soak it and cover it in its own juices, or you fill it with water, that vessel with water, a little bit of salt, and then you cover it with a top and you let it sit out for weeks, months, years, whatever, you have now taken away oxygen. So that same head of cabbage that rotted on the table has now turned into this beautiful, incredibly healing, very, very nutritious other form of food that is nothing like the actual cabbage, called sauerkraut. And that's fermentation. That's alchemy. That's what happens. The microbes eat away at the sugars, the carbohydrates. They lower the pH. They create all sorts of short chain fatty acids, other acids, and then it changes the entire composition of the cabbage into another food form, which is sauerkraut. And then when a person eats a sauerkraut, then you're getting a broken down version of what once was cabbage. But because it's a completely different food form, it has unleashed the fermentation process, and the microbes have unleashed all of the nutrients of the cabbage. So you have something that might have like a little bit of, let's just say, vitamin C, because cabbage does have some vitamin C, to sauerkraut, which is like mind-blowing amounts of vitamin C. So the breaking down process that fermentation does to a food form, my favorite part is it just unleashes the nutrients, and it makes it very digestible to the body, which is why it's such good healing food, especially for people with autoimmune or gut issues. Because myself, when I had Crohn's, I couldn't break anything down. I didn't have enough stomach acid. I didn't have enough bacteria. I needed help. I was pureeing